Wild West was pretty well tamed by 1913.
I saw one just like it in Waco.
Hey, Pike, you know what I hear? I hear they take out one of those things up north that can fly.
That was a balloon, you damned old fool.
No, the old man's right. They got motors, wings, go 60 miles in less than an hour.
Driven to the border by the irresistible thrust of civilization were the remnants of the breed that had made the West wild.
If they move, kill them.
The payrolls were harder to get at. The Army rode the railroad now. But there were still a few trails for the kind who'd be cold before they were tamed. They called them the Wild Bunch. Pike had been a gentleman of principle. He still had a principle or two.
We're not getting rid of anybody. We're gonna stick together just like it used to be. When you side with a man, you stay with him, and if you can't do that, you're like some animal. You're finished.
Dutch had dug for gold. He gave up digging.
How many cases did you take from the train?
16 cases of rifles. We lost one on the trail.
He stole it.
Lo quiero vivo.
Thornton should have been a lawyer. He always argued.
Oh! Relax. It's just some champagne we ordered.
Sykes had been a gunman in his day. He still had the gun.
We gotta get him back. How?
Gorch had been trying for years. Sometimes he almost worked up to normal.
I want you to meet my fiancée.
Hello and welcome back to Dave's Movie Diary. Yes, The Wild Bunch from 1969. A film with a mythic reputation, quite rightly so, especially when you consider what this film was doing at the time, 2 years after Bonnie and Clyde. There's some touchstones there and a link, I think, in terms of what's shown on screen. I haven't seen this one for a hell of a long time. I think I've only seen it the once. I don't know when, a long time ago. I don't have too many recollections of it. But it is, like I said, it's a film that's sitting right on the edge of cinema changing from old Hollywood to, well, sounds weird saying new Hollywood now, but it really was a break from the old Hollywood studio way of doing things and into the more exciting young filmmakers that were coming through. And Sam Peckinpah, although I suspect he was a bit older than the young guys I'm thinking of, like Scorsese, he still represents a definite changing of the guard. What's it about? Well, there's a whole bunch of aging outlaws that are the heroes is the wrong word, the protagonists in this film. They're led by a guy called Pike Bishop. This is William Holden. He's leading them. It kicks off into a big set piece right at the start of the film. They attempt a robbery right near the US-Mexico border. The job doesn't go to plan. They're ambushed and they're betrayed and they're forced to flee into Mexico. Now that they're hunted, they find themselves caught up between various groups, including Mexicans, bounty hunters, some shifting allegiances, and to survive, they're forced to take on a job from a Mexican general, who's one of the sleaziest guys you'll see in a film, in exchange for gold. And then things start unraveling. There's some trust issues within the bunch. Some of the old loyalties start breaking down a bit, and everyone starts operating in their own self-interest. And eventually, we get towards a final confrontation in a Mexican town that did have some. It did remind me of the final scene in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, which was filmed the same year. I mean, I don't think there was any. I think they both came out probably similar times. I doubt there was any knowledge of what the other one was doing. But the way that the final shootouts are done, the locations, the whole feel to it is very similar. Sam Peckinpah is a real maverick. I mean, the word maverick gets tossed around. This guy was a maverick. You don't have to go too far to find stories of his legendary behind-the-scenes persona, hard drinking, hard playing guy who really believed in the craft, but really believed in doing it his way. And there's stories are rife everywhere about fights on set. Use of drink and drugs and all sorts of things. This is what happened back in the day a lot more often, especially when you're out in the middle of nowhere. He would have pushed back hard against any sort of studio oversight of what he was doing. By this time, he had a few films under his belt, so he would have been really confident in what he was doing. He came out of more traditional Western filmmaking, films like Ride the High Country and Major Dundee in the early and mid-60s. But he starts pushing it into a darker, more violent, really morally unstable territory with his later work around this time. I've seen Ride the High Country a long time ago, and it was an excellent Western, is my memory. I remember thinking at the time that it was a lot more realistic than a lot of the other Westerns I'd seen up to that time. I think that came out in around 62. So the Wild Bunch is 7 years later. He then went on to do some even more interesting films. Some of them were in urban environments like Straw Dogs. That is a real suspense thriller with Dustin Hoffman. He made Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. Bob Dylan makes a cameo on that. Other films including Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia and Convoy in the later 70s with Chris Christopherson. The wheels were falling off by then. I think he was really his years of hard living had started to catch up with him. Some interesting decision making. But anyway, I think he's right in his prime when the Wild Bunch comes out, and I think this is his magnum opus. This would have been mentioned at the top when he passed away, and at 2.5 hours, he gets to play a lot in this one. So I think across his career, you get to see a filmmaker moving from initial control and realism into chaos by the end of it, and it's a really interesting ride. Big cast in this one. William Holden leading the pack. I always think of William Holden definitely like old Hollywood royalty from his work in the early 50s, classic films like Sunset Boulevard, Stalag 17 and Picnic, and then on to, of course, The Bridge on the River Kwai later in the 50s. And then I feel like his star started to wane a little bit, and by the time The Wild Bunch came out, he's aging a bit. I think he also had some off-screen issues. I think I saw him a lot in his 70s films, films like The Towering Inferno, The Champ, towards the end of the... was it The Champ? No, not The Champ. I think there's another film with Ricky Schroeder towards the end of the 70s. Anyway, he seemed to be really looking about 20 years older than he actually was at that point. But I feel like this is probably one of the last films where he's really mobile and sort of still in an action capacity. He ages pretty quick after this one. One of my mum's favourites. I think she would have seen those early 50s movies that are really quality films. I mean, Sunset Boulevard is a film way ahead of its time. Picnic's really good too. Bridge on the River Kwai is just one of those films that's probably been around and talked about so much that people forget how good it is. There's a real heaviness to William Holden by this point. He's probably, I don't know, maybe he's late 40s or around that age, but he looks a lot older. Anyway, he leads the bunch with a lot of authority, and you can see they all defer to him. And let me tell you, with this bunch of guys, he's really got to put his foot down a fair bit and try and insert some control. But anyway, he brings that star presence, but it is a bit fractured, which probably suits this character, actually, the Pike Bishop character. He's been around the track. As has Ernest Borgnine. He's the second in charge. He's the reliable guy in this bunch. He backs up William Holden's character a lot, and I think that probably sums up Ernest Borgnine in general. He's always a really grounded presence in the films I've seen him in. He's a really a man of his time. The way he looks, I couldn't picture him being a major star these days. These days you've got to have a certain look, a more airbrushed, I guess, 2026 look. Ernest Borgnine looks like a guy from the West. He looks solid. He looks like he's up for anything. But he always brings humanity to his roles. He always seems to pull back from the brink of being the bad guy, the films I've seen anyway. I've seen him in a few, including From Here to Eternity, The Dirty Dozen, of course. That's probably his biggest film. This one, he's been in so many films, but I haven't seen too many of them, to be honest. But he's just got such a recognizable face. He seems like a really good guy. I'd hazard a guess that he was a good guy off screen as well. He's the closest thing this film has to a moral center for me. He often looks a bit shocked at what's going on around him. He does have a great scene, though, when they're enjoying a sauna with some of the other boys, and he's there slapping his sizable belly. It's a real scene of the times. Who are the other guys in the bunch? A couple of my favourites that probably aren't well known, but I've seen them in quite a few things from around this period, and I just love their hard, lived-in look that they bring. Warren Oates, I mean, he personifies that to me. He just seems such a real guy. He looks like the sort of guy you'd find working on oil rigs or as a ranch hand or something like that, roughing it. I've seen him in a few of these. He became one of Peckinpah's guys, appeared in quite a few of his films. Straw Dogs, Alfredo Garcia. Fantastic little film called Cockfighter, based on a really interesting novel. I can't remember the name of the novelist, but he also wrote Miami Blues, which was made into a film, 1990, I think, with Alec Baldwin. He was sort of like I don't know, he wrote similar kind of novels to Elmore Leonard in a way, sort of similar descriptions. Anyway, check out Cockfighter if you can. Good film, great novel too. I think most people might know Warren Oates from Stripes. He plays the real hard-ass army drill sergeant kind of guy that tangles with Bill Murray, of all people. I've got a lot of great memories of Stripes, and I think Warren Oates passed away not long after that. If you look at the Wild Bunch again, like William Holden, if you look at Warren Oates in the Wild Bunch, he's a pretty virile looking character that gets around a lot. You compare him to the role in Stripes, it's only 12 years later, but he looks like he's aged about 25 years. So he never felt like he was acting to me, just existing. But yeah, I always loved seeing Warren Oates on screen, and similarly with Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson and Warren Oates play brothers in this film. They kind of have that same kind of Texas look. I think Ben Johnson actually was from Texas. He sure sounds like he is. I've seen him in a few films, including One-Eyed Jacks, the Western that Marlon Brando ended up directing. I think there's quite a few stories from that set as well. But I always remember Ben Johnson from The Last Picture Show, which is one of my favorite films ever. I think it's one of the best films of the 70s. Peter Bogdanovich's breakout film. That is an insanely well-made film. I think he got the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor in that one. And I think that's coloured my view of Ben Johnson. Whenever I see him, he plays a real mentor, father figure in the town in The Last Picture Show. And in this one, he's a bit of a rogue. He's actually one of the him and Oates are the more roguish guys in this one. They're the ones that are up for a drink and looking around for Mexican prostitutes all the time and really pushing the envelope. Men of action in this one. I really relate more to his warm presence in The Last Picture Show, if I'm honest. He's got a real sort of kindly look to him, whereas Warren Oates has. I can imagine Warren Oates a lot easier as a guy taking what he can. But anyway, another great performance from Ben Johnson, but it was a bit jarring seeing him in this context. Shows his range though. The other guy I want to talk about is Robert Ryan, and he's also perfectly cast. He's a guy who is critical to this film because he embodies the moral ambiguity at the heart of everything. He's a villain in a lot of films, but I always think he's a villain. He's not a villain in a traditional sense. He's just someone who seems to operate with his own logic. And whenever I see him on screen, I think something's up. I can't trust what he's doing. He's inscrutable. He's cunning. He's very intelligent, you can see. He always gives films that he's in a colder, more detached perspective. It's like he's someone watching the chaos around him and thinking about what his next move's going to be. I've seen him in other films, including The Bad Day at Black Rock, Dirty Dozen. I feel like I've seen him in other films too. He's got such a look of the time, tall, rangy. He's perfect in this because he used to be part of the Wild Bunch. He gets shot in an interesting scene with William Holden when they're with a couple of Mexican women in a flashback scene, and then he's gunning for William Holden, and it's an interesting dynamic. What this film is really well known for is violence and the depiction of violence in a cinematic way and the stylizing of violence. And at the top of this episode, I talked about Bonnie and Clyde because I think it's universally recognized that in Western cinema anyway, Bonnie and Clyde really ushered in a new way of depicting violence and like I said, stylizing it. And this film comes out a couple of years later, and while Bonnie and Clyde sort of opens the door to showing people getting shot repeatedly with blood and wounds and really cinematically depicting that on screen, the Wild Bunch just rams that door down and runs through it. There's multiple scenes right at the start. You get a sense for what this film is about. Extended slow motion gunfights, bodies reacting in fragments, and the blood and the movement with big cast of people is choreographed across the frame, and it turns violence into something much closer to ballet, like a brutal ballet. And you can see how much later cinema borrows from this. I'm thinking of films as well, like the John Woo films of the mid to late 80s, like The Killer and Hard Boiled and A Better Tomorrow. They really added an Eastern mix onto this as well, but this was really different at the time. And you look at the final scene, it is incredible. Like, this is 60 years ago nearly. And what happens in that final scene, the grimacing on the faces, you can see the muscles and the tendons straining to hang on to the weapons and the big machine gun, and bodies and dust and dirt flying everywhere, blood. You feel like you're there. I will say that this entire film feels soaked in whiskey. It's hard to know what was real and what wasn't. I feel like a lot of it was probably real. Constant drinking from the start to the finish. It's got a real tequila whiskey feel to it. They're just swinging straight from the bottles. And there's some great drunken performances in this one, especially when Oates and Johnson live it up when they come across the Mexicans. Some great scenes there inside the wine cellar, shooting through the big barrels, watching the red wine streaming out, dancing underneath it with their Mexican girls. It's some great work there. And I'd be interested to know how much of it was acting and how much of it wasn't. I think there's some legendary tales from the making of this film. I do love just the look of this film. Everything's sun-bleached. You know, we're talking about New Mexico, probably parts of Texas. The tint of the film looks incredible. Peckinpah and his crew really capture that dusty, sweaty, dirty feel. Exhausted masculinity everywhere you look. They look tired. They look like they've been on their horses for months. The characters and the actors. Like I said, it really felt to me less like actors performing and just more like these people existing inside a really worn out world. And so it feels very realistic. There's also no clean moral positions in this film. There's no good guys or bad guys. Everyone's in between. Everything's blurred, compromised. I don't think you can find any good guys in this. There's some really bad guys for sure. But it's one of those, again, a bit like Bonnie and Clyde. Who are you rooting for in this film? Are you rooting for the actors that you like? Even though they're doing morally questionable things, or are you just watching it? Are you just appreciating it? I think that's what I was doing. I was just marveling at the filmmaking and the acting. It just becomes like shifting survival logic after a while, and I think the moral collapse is really what defines this film and probably made it stand out as something different. There's no John Wayne character in this. There's no guys with the white hats. They've all got grey hats at least. Some have got black hats. I just want to touch on that final shootout again. It is incredible. The drums, the build up, the four of them walking into the town. You know something's going to go down. It's like reminded me of the Magnificent Seven, which I think is the first time that I'd seen this kind of bunch of guys together striding into towns against far greater numbers. And you know that it's probably not going to end well, but you're just with these guys. And it's built up so well, and then it suddenly erupts into chaos. The gunfire starts, there's explosions, this huge machine gun, and then the bodies falling everywhere. Everything choreographed. It is one of the most stylized early action sequences in cinema for me, and I can see why it made this film famous, and I can see why Peckinpah became known for that. The interesting thing too is that after this epic gunfight, there's silence, and then we get some great scenes of vultures. not just the furry sort, but the human sort, because there's guys picking through bodies, arguing over who shot who, rifling through, getting whatever they can. It was cutthroat times. And there's Robert Ryan moving through it all with that unreadable expression. So morality is completely dissolved in this world. It's a very cynical film, and it probably depicts where we were in the late 60s with everything that was going on in that turbulent decade. I think a lot of the uncertainty from the Vietnam War, what was happening with parts of communist, the communist influence in Eastern Europe, the world seemed to be breaking apart, from what I can tell. So Peckinpah seems to tell all that from an earlier time with this groundbreaking Western. So look, this is really a film at the exact breaking point of the Western genre for me. It really signals a shift into fractured storytelling. The opening credits are fantastic too. The way it pauses, and then it pauses on the bunch as they're coming into this town about to do this heist with the credits, and then it goes to like black and white stills. Really cinematic and interesting. Is this a... Oh, look, I'll go through the motions. Is this a date film? What do you think? I can't picture it. It's dirty and violent and bleak, and it's full of manly, sweaty men. None of them are really in their physical peak. I can't imagine why you would do this as a date film unless you're really twisted. But hey, whatever floats your boat. Not much romance or comfort in it, I'll say that. Hangover film, possibly. You can drift in and out of this. The story, for me, wasn't the central part. The plot gets a bit complicated, actually. It is a film that you can sort of let wash over you and just soak up the performances and like I said, the cinematography and the set pieces that are just massive. So I feel like maybe it is a hangover film. It goes for 2.5 hours, so you can just put it on, lay back. The final sequence will probably wake you up, and by then, hopefully, you're starting to feel a bit better. Just don't take on the cynical message that this film is putting out there. Otherwise, your hangover will kick in again. So look, it's a dusty, whiskey-soaked and tequila-soaked Western about the collapse of old cinematic mythology for me. It's really, maybe it's a bit like the old Altamont of cinema. Altamont, the Stones concert at the end of '69 definitely showed that the '60s values were dead, and we're on into the more cynical, all about me '70s, and maybe the Wild Bunch is doing the same thing. It's definitely doing it for Westerns, but maybe it's helping usher in the new breed of filmmaking that I think makes the '70s just about the best time period in cinema. So I did find this film a little bit hard to follow with all the manoeuvring at times, but it's impossible to forget once you've seen it, and very enjoyable. So especially for people that are into cinema and that enjoy filmmakers at their peak, I can highly recommend this one. It's available on HBO Max at the moment, so check it out. And thanks for anyone out there who's listening. See you next time.